What's up, everybody? It's the Bipolar Prophet, and welcome back to Maypole Farm and Farming Simulator 22. Yay! BP's on vacation. It's my first official day of my vacation, and as I so often do, I've procrastinated all day to making this video. Well, that's not really true. I haven't procrastinated. It's just I forgot how much work setting up a role play is. I had to do a bunch of things off screen, and of course I had some real world stuff to do. Anyway, you can see it's October 1st. It's the first day of October. We have $31,634, and that all comes from contracting work. I spent pretty much all of the end of last month just doing contract work for various people around the Maypole area. Piggott Ag Services, Ellis Agricultural. I did some work for Brewster Agricultural Consultants. So we made a little bit of money. Also, there's been some changes on the farm. One thing that that you always wish you have time to do, but you don't always have time to do when you come look at a new piece of property, you come look at a new farm, you want to look at everything, right? You want to look at all the buildings, you want to look at all the sheds, you want to look at everything that's included in the sale of the property. And I just didn't have time to do that with this because I was in the process of transitioning out of Drummond. I had a lot of legal paperwork to sign, things like that. And I didn't really spend as much time walking around this farm as I should have. One of the things that I really wish I would have spent some more time on was some of the sheds. Some of the sheds on this farm are very old, and a couple of them were actually falling down. So I had to get rid of them, had to have them torn down. I basically just knocked them down, piled up the stuff, and called it a day. And then I got an interesting offer for what you see in front of us, which is chickens. I got these chickens for next to nothing. Somebody said, "Hey, I've got all these chickens, and I don't know what to do with them. We're getting out of livestock. We're going all to arable. Would you take maybe 40 of these chickens off my hands for a couple $100?" Sure, I would. This farm had a chicken coop, and a fairly high-tech chicken coop too, like everything else animal related on this farm. They're all very high-tech. Another thing I didn't realize is that these buildings are modular. This building, the cow shed and the sheep enclosure are all modular. Apparently these come in sections. They come in on a truck from a company in Germany. They come in here, they drop them off, and they set it up. All you got to do is do some site work, make sure you've got a level pad to set it down on, and they do everything else, which is pretty cool. So we have chickens. We have 40 chickens, just to try to make a little money during the off seasons, right, when we're not doing any arable stuff or any dairy stuff. Try to make a little money. The chickens seem happy enough. They're all healthy. So, I don't know all that much about chickens. I know I feed them, and they lay eggs. That's really all I know. I'm good enough. Also, there was a stone wall around this chicken yard here, and it was in really bad shape. The chickens were actually sneaking through the yard, so there was a bunch of pieces of fence and stuff laying around here. I just threw those up just to get something so the chickens wouldn't run all over the yard. Not that I really care that much, but I don't want to run them over either, and I don't want to lose them. I don't want to lose them to foxes and everything else. So, you can see they're pretty healthy. They run around. They're fairly happy. So, okay, very good. We have chickens. Excellent. So, also, this was an area where there was a shed that was falling down, and I didn't realize how bad it was. I went in I forget why I went in there. There was some stuff in the corner of one of them, and I was just going to clean it out. You know what I mean? So I drove the tractor. I drove the Fenton here with the bucket on the front of it, and I bumped into one of the posts. Now, that's usually not a big deal, right? You don't want to smash into it because you can break it. This post literally disintegrated with the slightest touch, and the roof started to sag. And I was like, okay, well, that's not good. So that had to come down. So what I decided to do instead was just put some like maintenance-y stuff down here, stuff that had been cluttering up the big barn on the other side by the cow shed. I said, put it down here, got plenty of room for it. So the neighbors over here that actually own this bit, this pig facility here that they're not using for whatever reason, they didn't seem to have a problem with it. So I brought some pipes and some tools and a generator and all that stuff down here, and I can do maintenance on the tractors. What else? Well, you can see that we're hooked up to this. This is a John Deere R732i power spray. This is a neat rig. So part of the environmental program that I'm involved with for my grant, part of it is to limit the use of herbicides, to limit the use of chemicals on your fields. For a couple of reasons. One is because, even though the amount of chemical that goes on the field versus the amount of water is very small, chemicals can run off into the groundwater. That's bad, right? We've already talked about that. The other thing is it reduces fuel usage. So they really want you to watch how much fuel you're using. Now, the ultimate way to weed, and that's what we're doing, there's herbicide in this tank. The ultimate way to weed, to use no chemicals, would be to use a mechanical weeder, right? To use a hoe. Just go up and down and knock the weeds down. It doesn't really work that great in non-row crops. Barley's is not a row crop per se, right? So you can do it. The problem is the weeds get in. The crop is so dense and there's so much population, especially because this soil isn't the best thing in the world for barley. So I really had to pound the seeds in. We were putting in, up to 250 seeds per meter at some points on this field. So that's a lot of population, really dense, right? So after this crowns up and after it grows a little bit, weeds aren't going to be a problem because they're not going to be able to push up through all this canopy. But right now, while it's still kind of flat, the weeds can get a hold. Once they get a hold, they can choke off the roots of the barley, reduce your yield, right? It's all about yield. The more yield you can get, the more people you can feed. That's the whole thing. So I talked to James, our local dealer, and he actually, in combination with Brewster Agricultural Consultants, hooked me up with this. This is floating around the area on a demo. It just came down from Louth, actually, where Perry missed his chance to have a go with this. He didn't have anything that needed to be sprayed when this was around. He did go see it, and he likes it. This is 115,000 euros to buy. Way, way more money than I ever want to spend on a sprayer. But what's cool about this is it's got these, if you look up at the very top of the booms there, it's got these weed sensors. So it's got a computer built into it. It's programmed to take a picture every, 10 milliseconds or whatever. Analyze that picture, and it can tell the difference between a crop and a weed. It's programmed with all the weeds from the local area, so it knows what they look like, and it just sprays herbicide on those weeds. That way you're not just drowning your field in herbicide, even though it's not that much. This is very efficient. It gets the job done, and so okay, very good. Again, 115,000 euros, probably not something I'm ever going to buy, but since James said, hey, it's here for a demo, do you want to use it? Do you have anything that needs to be sprayed? Well, as a matter of fact, I do. So let's go ahead and hop in the Fendt, and we'll get started with this. Now, I'm not 100% certain how this works. I got a real quick sort of tutorial about how it works from the representative, the John Deere representative. So basically, what you want to do is you want to roll out into your field and unfold it. It does have a pretty long reach on it, probably a lot longer than I actually need for my operation. In fact, I think I'm going to hook it on something if I'm not careful. Yeah, that's pretty long. So you can see it auto levels, which is nice. It sort of finds its own where it wants to be so that the sensors can get the best picture. We'll just turn it on. And there we go. Now, see, you notice it's on right now, right? But there's nothing coming out of the nozzles. Why is that? Because there's no weeds here. So if I backed up, see, it's just spraying where there's weeds. How cool is that? So we'll just go forward and we'll let it do its thing. That's pretty cool. It uses a lot less product. It kills the weeds efficiently. The John Deere guys say it's got about a 95% accuracy rate, which means that it will find and kill 95% of the weeds in your field if it's programmed correctly. It works off like an SD card, like a flash drive, right? Now, again, this is a big old piece of kit, way bigger than I need on this farm, at least right now anyway. But again, any chance I get to use something cool, well, I'm going to use it. And I wanted to get these weeds out of here, even though this is going to go dormant for the winter. But if I can get the weeds out of it now, then I won't have to worry about it later. By the time it comes back around again, it'll emerge up pretty strong. And the just density of the barley will keep the weeds from growing through. I keep forgetting how wide this thing is, and I need to turn way earlier than I do. And it's got this pivot hitch on it too, which makes it great to turn, but not great to turn at the same time. Not going to take too many passes with this thing, that's for sure. I'm actually kind of surprised that I got to use this. I think my friends at Brewster had something to do with this because obviously I'm not a very big farm, right? There's much bigger farms in the area that would probably get a lot more use out of this than I would, but I think Brewster, I've done some work for them over the last couple of weeks, and I've built a relationship with them, and I think they've said they were probably talking to the John Deere rep saying, hey, we got a guy that could really benefit from this. So I appreciate that. Once again, Brewster Agricultural Consultants coming through for me. Really, really appreciate it. I'm absolutely fascinated by the technology, that this represents. The fact that this thing will take a picture of your crop, figure out what's a weed and what isn't, and only spray where it senses weeds with a 95% accuracy rate. That's pretty good. I'll take that all day. Now you still got to drive across the whole field. So, you'd have to do that either way, whether you did it mechanically, whether you did it where you were just spraying the entire field, or whether you're doing it like this. What this does is this reduces the amount of material you're using. It's economical, right? It doesn't, I barely used any. I didn't pay for the herbicide in here anyway. But, if I did, I'd be very happy because I could get 3, 4, 5 applications out of this before I ever had to refill it again. Economical. Economical is good. It is a little unwieldy in a field this size, but it's not awful. I'm just going to make one more pass up the edge here to make sure I got it all. It's finding some weeds on the very edge of the field, so that's good. So John Deere tells me this is called see and spray technology. And I can certainly see why it's called that, because it looks at the field. It looks at the crop. It looks at, what it's looking at. And then it determines whether it's a crop or it's a weed. So you can get a little bit better look at the sensors, which are obviously down firing. They take a picture at an angle, so that way they can see the weed if it's halfway buried in the crop or whatever. And as you can tell, it works fantastic. So I wonder if I'm too far forward. No, I guess I'm okay. We'll let this fold up. So now we got to mow some grass. I realize it's October 1st. It is really the absolute last day, last week really, that you want to mow. Luckily, we haven't had a frost. I wouldn't mow if we had a frost. Before we start mowing, though, I want to show you something. You may notice that this is not the Iseria cedar that I borrowed from Perry. So, again, my own fault. In my rush to get it ready, to get it greased up, to get it, get some seeds in it and get it out on the field, I didn't look at the frame, the actual attachment frame of it. The bottom right of the attachment frame was bent. So when I hooked it up to the tractor and I lifted it up, there was so much stress on that side, it just snapped off. Now, I could have used it, but there wasn't enough material left to weld it back on. So I couldn't actually lift it, and that's not ideal, because then I'm just dragging everything through the dirt as I'm making turns and everything. So, and I called Perry and I told him, and I said, listen, I'll fix it. I'll have somebody weld a new frame for it and everything. And he's like, don't worry about it. He says it was just sitting in a shed anyway, and that's on me. That's not on him. He was nice enough to bring it down, let me use it, and I should have checked it out more. He, like I said, it was sitting in a shed, so he wasn't going to check it out. You know what I mean? He probably never planned on using it again. It was just going to sit there until he scrapped it or until somebody came along that wanted it, I guess. So I ended up buying this used from a guy up the road. Just happened to have one. I lucked out huge. It's a little newer. It's the same size. It's about the same capacity and everything works the same way. So, and I didn't really have to do anything to it. Put some air in the tires. The tires were a little flat. That was all I had to do with that. So, no harm, no foul. Stuff like that happens, Anyway, so let's go mowing. Fire this up. with my little tiny mower. Now, I don't know if I'm going to subject you guys to sitting through this entire process of me mowing this, because it's a pretty good sized field. This is a pretty small mower. So I don't know. We'll see. I guess if I was smart, I would have started going the other way, right? And we definitely need to go faster than that. Otherwise, we will be doing this all day. So why we do this, I thought I would talk a little bit more about the environmental score, because I realized when I talked about it the last time, I didn't really explain it all that well. I sort of jumped all over the place. So after having worked with Brewster Agricultural Consultants for a couple of days over the last couple of weeks, I actually have a better handle on how it works too. I mean, I pretty much understood it anyway. They were definitely very good at explaining it to me when I signed the grant application, you know. But there's a couple of things that, you know, I could have explained better. One of them is the fuel consumption component of this. Well, BP, how do they track fuel consumption? If it's all self-monitoring, can't you just tell them you used, you know, X amount of fuel when you actually used Y amount of fuel? Sure. Yeah, I mean, you could do that, right? That, you know, that's sketchy, obviously, but you could do that. But that's not how it works. How it works is there's a device, you know, modern technology like everything else, right? There's a device that actually plugs in to a diagnostic port in your tractor, much like your car, you know, same basic idea. And it reads all the sensors from your tractor, right? So fuel flow and fuel use and all that other stuff. So, and it sends this data, I think it's once every 10 days, it sends this data off to a giant database somewhere in Europe. So, you know, they have a pretty good idea of how much fuel you're actually using, so they can track that. Which is fine, you know what I mean? I wasn't planning on lying about how much fuel I use anyway, but this takes that out of my hands. I don't have to worry about it. You know what I mean? This it's a computer. It's gonna tell the truth no matter what. So I don't know what's going on with the corner of that field. That's weird that it just stacks that all up in a massive pile like that. But okay, whatever. Probably gonna TED this field anyway for hay, so it'll all get spread out anyway. The other one I'll probably just throw in the silage pit. The silage clamp, now that it's empty. So the other aspects of this, tillage, weed control, nitrogen, and pH, those are all really functions of yield, right? With the possible exception of nitrogen, and we'll talk about that after. So pH, tillage, and weed control are functions of yield. Obviously, the more production you can do, the better it is, right? It helps the economy, it helps, you know, the food supply, it helps the production chains, it helps all the way across the board, right? So this is what these governments are rewarding you for. Yield is a big one. Yield is, you know, it is a major part of the environmental score grant system. But it's not that simple, because it also, all of those things also tie into fuel consumption and sustainability and environmental responsibility, right? So sustainability is also a big part of all of this. You know, how environmentally responsible are you in your operation, right? Because, you know, in the old days when you could just, you know, burn as much diesel as you wanted because diesel was as cheap as water and water was free, you know, herbicides were 4 times as powerful and you used twice as much, and you know what I mean, and everything was, you know, bright green or bright gold, and, you know, grew up 10 feet tall, and it didn't matter. You know what I mean? You could till the first 6 inches of topsoil off, you know, every year, because there was plenty more under that. Obviously those practices are no longer sustainable, right? The world is a pretty small place when you think about how many people that the limited amount of agricultural land that there is has to feed. So of course, you know, governments think about that. You know what I mean? Well, we've got X amount of millions of people to feed, and how are we going to do it? The sustainability part is important as well. They want to reward you for using practices that are good for the planet, that are good for the air, that are good for the water, that are good for the soil, so that we can continue to grow food, continue to increase our production, because we're only going to have to increase it. You know what I mean? There's never going to come a time when it's going to be, we're going to need less of anything. The world's just getting too crowded for that. So, and these governments realize that, with these grants, that, they have a chance now to say, well, if you want this money, then you're going to do this, right? You're going to do A, B, C, and D, and we're going to pay you. And the fact that they give you a range, a score, as it were, of things that you can do is good, because it's not like them saying, if you don't do these things, we're going to take money from you, right? They don't do that. They only say, if you don't do these things, we're just not going to give you this grant, and you're probably not going to get approved for another one. If you make an effort, if you follow our guidelines, if you follow the guidelines of the experts, of the agronomists and the scientists and everything else, then we're going to reward you for that by giving you some money. So that's really what it comes down to. It's really sustainability. Are the practices that you have in place in your operation now, are they sustainable for a long-term future in agriculture? You know what I mean? Are you doing things that are just going to, hurt your soil or hurt your land or hurt the air or hurt the water? Or are you doing things that will alleviate the runoff, will alleviate the emissions, will, give you strong soil and healthy soil so you can grow strong and healthy crops? That's really all it is. And of course, fuel consumption, with fuel prices being what they are now, and with the situation in the world, and fuel being, one of the least stable things, commodities on the planet right now, the less fuel you can use, the better. Now, having said all that, they're obviously, agriculture is a fuel-intensive operation, right? There's really no way to get around it. I'm using a fair bit of fuel just driving around this field with this little mower. Now, could I use a bigger mower? Sure. Make less passes, use less fuel, all good things. Sure. The problem is that I can't really afford a bigger mower right now, so I have to use what I have to use. I had a couple of conversations with old Roy down at Johnny V's restaurant for breakfast, and he's told me some stories about the area and about, how these farms sort of popped up over the last 50 or 60 years. How this was predominantly a dairy farming area, but when the milk crisis hit, as everybody knows what the milk crisis did to the milk industry. So a lot of these farms went to arable. Farm is about, I think it's 80 years old. I think it was first established about 80 years ago, from what Roy told me. And it was a dairy farm. Like most of the farms around here, it was a dairy farm. It wasn't very big. I think they had, at their peak, I think they had 100 cows. You know what I mean? Just enough to sell milk and make some homemade cheese and things like that. Had a little shop up here in the corner before this meadow got extended. So, it was a nice little place. And then these last owners, were really making a push to make this, the showpiece dairy of the area, I guess, by bringing in all these high-tech cow sheds and robotic feeders and everything else. And then just couldn't keep it going. You know what I mean? I did hear an interesting story at the convenience store a couple days ago. I popped in there to get a drink. It was hot and I was thirsty, and so I ran down there to get a drink because I didn't have anything in my refrigerator. And I heard an interesting story from one of the clerks that works there about what may have happened to the people who live here. Now, Roy told me that the people who lived here just disappeared one night, packed all their stuff, and took off, and basically left the bank holding the bag, But this convenience store clerk told me that there was a murder on this farm, a murder in Maypole. Can you imagine? In this lovely little area, there was a murder. He told me that he had heard that some unknown person from some unknown place had snuck in here in the middle of the night and killed the entire family that owned this farm, and then buried their bodies out somewhere out in a field somewhere. So, and he was like, and he really believed this story too. Either he really believed it or he was really selling it, because he was like, if you plow those fields, be careful because you might plow up a skeleton. He was absolutely selling it. Do I believe it? Probably not. That's one of those stories that they're fun to tell, right, and fun to listen to, but that's probably not. I'm sure that's not what happened. But don't worry, if I do plow up a skeleton, you guys will be the first ones to know about it. I would imagine that you're going to see a lot of jumps in time between now and probably the end of my vacation, because there really isn't going to be all that much to do. Really, the only thing I have left to do for this particular year here at Maypole is finish this grass, obviously. I'm trying to decide if I want to plow this up and replant it, but it's kind of late. I don't want to plant in October. It's way too late for that. So we may do that next year. I don't know. I can't really decide what the right thing to do with that is. Maybe you guys have some ideas. Maybe you can tell me. Would it be a good idea for me to plow these up and reset them and start all over again? With the corresponding hit and fuel consumption that I'm going to take from that and everything. Or do I just leave them and fertilize them and roll them and take care of them as best I can? I'm not really sure. I know this is a sheep meadow, sheep pasture. It is going to have sheep in it for quite a while. So because now we have chickens, which will give us a little bit of money over the winter. I don't have so many that I'm going to be, become a millionaire on eggs, but we've got a few. So, and the next animal that's going to come to Maypole are cows. I went back and forth about how I wanted to seed the farm with cows, and I've decided that I'm probably going to start with maybe 10 or 15, and it's going to be a pretty even split. Well, it's going to be about 75-25, 75% ready to go heifers and 25% calves, because I can't really wait a year and a half for the heifers to calve and have milk and everything. I'm going to have to wait as it is. So anyway, guys, so thanks so much for all the comments, for all the feedback, for all the suggestions, and all the tips and everything you guys have been leaving. It means a lot to me. If you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. I hope you like what you see. If you just stopped by because this video got recommended on your YouTube feed, welcome. Hope you like what you see. If you do like what you see, don't be afraid to click the subscribe button. It's the best way of being notified of when I make a new video. Make sure to click the little bell too. My videos aren't all that frequent, but when they come out, you'll definitely want to be notified so you can keep up with the ever ongoing story of Maypole Farm. So, and to everybody else, I also want to say a couple of things. I almost forgot this. Jeez, I didn't want to forget this part. This was the important part. I was looking through my YouTube statistics, right? Something I don't do very often. But YouTube had sent me an email about something, and so I was looking at some stuff, and it occurs to me that I have subscribers. So in July, it will have been 8 years since I put up my first video. I put up my first video in July of 2014. I'm almost positive it was a Farm Sim 13 video. In fact, I know it was a Farm Sim 13 video. It's the only thing I ever played back then. And I have subscribers that have been with me for almost that long. And I want to say thank you so very much to all of you guys that have been with me for 6, 7, 8 years, 5 years. Guys, that means more to me. It touches my heart. It really did. It put a lump in my throat. And I'm not just saying this, okay? You guys who know me know when I say something, I mean it. It put a lump in my throat to look down and see these names of the people who have been with me for that long, through all the long breaks, through all the lunacy that is bipolar prophet, right? It means everything in the world to me. And to see you guys come back as soon as I put up a video and say, hey, BP, it's great to see you, man. I say this all the time, and I absolutely mean it. You guys are not subscribers. You're not viewers. You're certainly not fans. You're my friends. And thank you so very, very much for letting me be your friend and letting me come into your world every so often with one of my rambly, long-winded videos. It means everything to me, guys. Thanks so much. And to everybody who's new, stick around, because I'm not going anywhere. You may not see me for 6 months, but when I come back, there'll be a whole bunch of videos, You know what I mean? So I want to be celebrating 20, 30 years on YouTube. So stick around. It'll be worth it, I promise. Anyway, guys, thanks so much for watching. And as always, this is the Bipolar Prophet saying, see you later.